William, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. So besides the obvious safety risks associated with posting private personal details online, what are some of the additional risks for young people who we know don't always have the foresight to realize that what you post today has a way of haunting you tomorrow?
Well, I think that's precisely it, but I guess that part of the issue is that as adults and as older people, I guess, we need to take cognizance of the fact that this is a very different world that we're living in now to one that, we grew up in. So even younger parents might be, shocked at what people are seeing and sharing online. And yet this is a degree to which, almost everything these days is put on a video somewhere or on some kind of a platform somewhere. And of course, there's a positive side to that and a negative, and the downside is, as you pointed out, some of these things may well come back and bite those people in some years later, particularly if it's something that's embarrassing. But I think the default point to move from is to understand that children's lives now and the way they understand and interpret their world is fundamentally different to ours. It's a common thing for them to be online, if they're lucky enough to have access, that is, for them to be online almost all the time, and for them to be sharing their lives and their life experiences, whether they are funny, embarrassing, or otherwise.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about where this relaxed view of privacy or sharing comes from.
Well, I don't know if it's as much a relaxed view as one that's fundamentally different to ours. As adults, we grew up not wanting to share a lot of those things. We've got I guess partly because we've got a greater level of suspicion of social networks, which is probably fair and appropriate, that we don't share nearly as much. Whereas, of course, our children are growing up in an era where, so much reality television is there that seems to show just about everything all the time. And then they're exposed to these social media platforms that literally show just about anything and everything all the time. So their understanding of privacy is different, which isn't to say that privacy isn't fundamentally important or that we shouldn't be making sure that we teach them certain things like don't share things that are embarrassing, don't share, pictures of your private parts, precisely because that kind of thing can lead to all sorts of other consequences. And don't, give out your personal information and your personal data. So in as much as children are sharing a lot more now than we certainly would feel comfortable with as adults, I think that certainly the more savvy ones are already aware that say, no, well, I'm not going to tell these people where I live. Or they'll say, if they ask me where I live, I'll tell them I live in the UK when they're living here in South Africa. So they're a lot more savvy, but so it's a different version of privacy to one that we understand. But to be clear, it's absolutely critical that we help our children understand that there's certain things that they can share and certain things that they really, really shouldn't share.
You said there are some positive elements to this different view of privacy. What are those?
Well, I guess it's understanding that, they can have, so the ones that in South Africa certainly that have been lucky enough to be online, and as much as they've been isolated from their friends over this period where we've all been isolated, they've been able to share their experiences in their lives in ways that, during school time they probably would have done anyway. So it has meant that they've been able to maintain those levels of connections and their social networks in ways that perhaps as adults we wouldn't be nearly as used to. So that's one of the positive elements, and they can do that precisely because, for me as an adult, I engage in Zoom meetings, but beyond that, I'm not going to be going and having FaceTime calls with everyone else that I know. I'd far prefer to see them in real life. Whereas for young people that have grown up with this as their norm, it's not that unusual to see that this is how you experience something with your friends on a daily basis doing that. So that, I think, is a positive idea about that they understand and have far better and far more effective use of these platforms to actually build real and meaningful connections. Of course, the downside is that those meaningful connections can just as easily be destroyed and vilified if they are subject to bullying or if they post something that's particularly embarrassing, for example.
Thank you very much for speaking to us. That was William Bird from Media Monitoring Africa.